what's the status of the three networks in terms of the administration? Are we in or out? And he mentioned quite accurately that it had been speculated that ABC was a sort of a house organ of the White House because Howard K. Smith had this long interview with the president last March, I think it was, and the others haven't had theirs yet. That, I think, is a harmful exaggeration. ABC has not been the house organ of the president or any other president. It was perhaps an accident of circumstance that Smith, quite sincerely, whom I've known for 25 years, believed what he said, or he wouldn't have said it, espousing a view supporting the president in Vietnam, whereas others, Severide and others, opposed him. And it's human nature to incline toward the person that's hitting you over the head a little more lightly than the other. But the net, at this point in time, none of the networks is enjoying any great popularity with the government, as you can see by what I said earlier in terms of the testimony before the Erwin Committee. Mr. Stanton made a point of saying that the Federal Communications Commission has been going through correspondence. This may or may not have got out here on the wires. It said they spent 5 weeks on I forget how many pages of correspondence before they decided that a 9-minute sequence on bullfighting was not distorted. Yes. What role would Gene McCarthy have in '72? He's an enigma at this point. He's teaching poetry at the American University, beguiling the, do we call them co-eds now, women's lib? What do we call them? Anyway, beguiling male and female students alike. There are a lot of people who think that McCarthy might just be a spoiler in '72. I haven't talked to him for a long time, but I think that he cruelly disillusioned a lot of his young and older supporters in '68. Not that he could have made it. He probably couldn't, and he went farther than almost anybody thought he was going to go in the first place. But I think he disillusioned and embittered a lot of people by giving the impression that he really wasn't interested in the presidency. He was more interested in himself and just sort of taking a look at the way the political machine functioned. If that was the case, and it's possible, I'm not saying that's gospel, it's certainly possible that he'll have the same attitude now. He's still got some people behind him, and I think he can still get a certain amount of money. One of the astonishing things about that story that I quoted a minute ago about the fact that we spent $300 million in '68, I don't think most of the McCarthy people themselves knew it, but the McCarthy campaign cost $11 million. And having watched it from the beginning in New Hampshire, that's really extraordinary. He had some very creditable angels, and the bills, I suppose, are all paid, but I didn't realize that they had spent that much money. I wish I could give you a better answer than that, but I can't. Yes. My opinion of Senator Hughes is very high, and I'm not running for election in this or any other state. I meant to interpolate into my remarks something to that effect, even though I admire him for pulling out when he did, because I think he's a realist and decided that this was not the thing for him. But I met him when he was governor, and I came here with Bobby Kennedy in '66 on a campaign, the off-year election. And we spent almost literally the whole day with him, from breakfast breakfast in Des Moines to whatever the name of the town was before we went back to Chicago, and I was enormously impressed with him, and I've been impressed with him since he's been in the Senate. I think this kind of a man who really believes in something, who shows that he believes in something, is strong, has overcome an enormous problem, doesn't try to weasel about it, but puts it out in the open, is something that is refreshing. And I'm sure that that's the reason that he won 2 terms in Iowa. And it's too bad that his exposure wasn't enough, perhaps, for him to show that strength in the country as a whole. I'm aware of the fact that some people are upset that he delves a little bit into the occult and has talked to seers now and then, but I will tell you something that you may have noticed it, that I was telling Mr. Schwartz as we were driving over from the airport. To show the way the man's mind works, which I respect, he was on Meet the Press, and right at the end, right almost the last question, somebody asked him, Governor, we understand that you are fascinated by the occult and seers and so on, extrasensory perception. Is this something that a presidential candidate ought to be giving his time to? And quick as a flash, Hughes said, well, I have always been interested in anything that might stretch the understanding of the mind. I thought this was a very good answer. I'm not subscribing to seers or the occult or anything else, but I thought this was fine. I didn't mean to make such a long plug for him, although I'm not ashamed of it, but he is an interesting figure in the Senate, and an important one. Yes. Well, the question was, what are the potentials for unity in the Democratic Party, and if not, a 4th party? A 4th party is a real danger. The Democratic Pauls are very uptight about this, thinking that Wallace would be the 3rd party, then it would be a peace party or a McCarthy party or a Lowenstein party or whatever. They're uptight about this, and I can understand it, because the Democrats are going to have enough trouble as it is beating the incumbent, and if they're split off in 2 different ways, not just one, they're going to have to get an awful lot of independents to compensate. Now, in terms of the possibility for unity in the Democratic Party, there are 2 things to say about this. One is that at the moment, there isn't any real bad blood that I detect among any of the people who are running. They're all gentlemen. They're all pretty much friends to each other. That could deteriorate very quickly, but at the moment, it is not. Second, and this is much more tricky, and it takes a battery of Philadelphia lawyers to figure this one out. As you know, largely due to Senator McGovern and Senator Hughes, the Democrats are in the process of reforming their procedure for picking delegates to the convention. Now, theoretically, this is the most democratic process that's ever been thought up since the days of Athens, but it can be a hell of a mess, and nobody really knows how it's going to work out. If everybody were of goodwill, then you could sail in and be properly challenged and be seated or not seated. But it happens, as we all know, in the time of a convention, when something as big as that is at stake, we're not always of goodwill, and it's been suggested that there can be just a calculated battery of challenges to everybody, and it could grind the thing to a halt for some time. hopefully the bugs will be squeezed out of it. But the Democrats are greatly disadvantaged at the moment in not having one or two people instead of all these others. I asked Fred Harris about this the other day. Oh, he said that really is a good thing because it shows we are democratic. We will go through the primaries, and the people will get a chance to look at us, and then they'll pick the right one. I hope he's right.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Morgan. I'm sure there are more questions. I do hate to cut this off, and I won't cut it off entirely because those of you who still have questions, may meet Mr. Morgan in the green room at our right, and you can have time to discuss your questions with him there until approximately 10 o'clock. So we stand adjourned.